Greetings and salutations, gamers. My name's Kyle, also known as GamersWeekend, and the other day I was made aware about this short from my viewers.
Wear the ring. Well, fellow creator GamersWeekend
Thanks for the shout out, man.
discovered that if you equip the Flame Stoneplate ring, a +5 Black Iron armor set, and use the Pyromancy Flash Sweat, you can reduce the damage of the fire by 82%, which nearly mimics the effects of the Orange Shard ring. Is that really useful? No, not really, but it is pretty cool.
Believe it or not, it actually is kind of useful. If you're not wanting to go through the process of doing the incredibly hard ceaseless skip in order to do a minimum boss's glitchless run, then you could use all that fire resistance in order to skip ceaseless discharge. Is it an incredibly niche use? Absolutely. But it is still somewhat useful. Although, if you really want some Dark Souls knowledge that's totally useless, I've got a bunch of it saved up in the weird cache of knowledge that I've built up over the last decade or so of Dark Souls. And when I say useless, I mean knowledge that will basically never have an application for most players without either hacking or causing severe glitches to the game. Musical segue. For starters, let's talk about Rickard, that blacksmith who sits in his own little cage, never to come out in the new Londo ruins. He not only creates magic weapons, but also sells the player sorceries, which makes a lot of sense considering he himself is quite magical, in the sense that he's not actually sitting in his cage, but rather floating in it. Weirdly enough, if you use cheats to move yourself into the cage, there's actually an invisible floor here with collision and everything, and if you play your cards just right and die with the right timing, you can even get your bloodstain stuck in there with him. It's pretty cool stuff. But that's not all when it comes to the Pickle Blacksmith. Did you know that Rickard is actually wearing a totally unique armor set found nowhere else in the game? Killing him doesn't make him drop it, but with the Dark Souls gadget, we can find his armor just sitting around in the game files. It's called the Mage Smith set, and it's pretty cool looking. It's got this nice darker color palette with a neat necklace. Functionally, it's the exact same thing stat-wise as the Sorcerer set. So getting your hands on it doesn't have any real defensive advantages, but fashion, it's certainly up there. Funnily enough, it even has a somewhat unique design for female characters, which never appears even on an NPC during normal gameplay. As far as I'm aware, there's no way to actually see this armor set in-game without editing the game files and putting it on yourself. Speaking of digging around in the game's files, there's plenty of weird broken items that you can spawn into the game. Most of the time they take severely breaking the game via glitching the in-game's menu, but while digging around I managed to find this thing. Weird, isn't it? Upon doing some research, it seems nobody's 100% sure what this thing is, but it's speculated that it's a whip that was removed from the final version of the game. Although there's not much else to say about it, since its in-game model doesn't even seem to be tied to the item. Instead, it just seems to spawn in as the heater shield. I really wish there was more to say about this thing, but yeah. Just a really weird icon that confounded me for like a solid 30 minutes. This next one admittedly is, by technicality, useful. But I have no idea where else to share this information, and to be honest, this makes such a small difference you've probably never even noticed it in normal gameplay. But chances are it's actually probably affected you at some point in time if you've played through Dark Souls. In the depths, you may remember these butcher enemies. One sits neatly at her table, and another is camped out ready to ambush the player from above. This one up top is the one we're more interested in today. Did you know that when she drops down to attack the player, she actually takes fall damage from the drop? It's just barely enough that you can see the damage tick, but so small that you'd probably never notice if you weren't clued in on it. This one actually came up during the Dark Souls one-shot competition and was brought up by the main character of Toy Story. You know, the Dark Souls trumpet guy. He's where I personally found out about the little factoid, so credit where credit's due on that one. Also, this guy's like one of the funniest human beings I've ever known. Seriously, go give his content a watch. Now, if you were on a run that did such low damage that every point of damage mattered and you really needed to kill this butcher for some reason, then by definition, this would technically be considered useful. But given how little the damage is, it probably hasn't made a difference in 99% of your playthroughs. To end us off for today, let's hit to Anor Londo. Something you almost definitely already know is that across the Souls franchise, defeating bosses causes certain bonfires to load in. However, did you know that this is true even with the bonfire just before Guinevere? The Princess Chamber bonfire won't spawn in if Ornstein and Smo are still alive. Coincidentally, the elevators up to the bonfire aren't functioning either until they're defeated. But if you somehow were able to make it to Guinevere without defeating the Anor Londo duo, she'll still spawn in and is fully interactable. In fact, you can even kill her and turn Anor Londo dark, as you might expect. A really neat side effect of this is being able to make Anor Londo dark while the duo boss is still alive, and their cutscene still fully renders in the dark, letting you see this really cool variation of their cutscene in the dark Anor Londo. And before you ask, yeah, this also works with the face transition cutscenes. And might I add, they look incredibly cool in the dark. Seeing their glow just ever so slightly illuminate themselves in the darkness of Anor Londo is so cool looking. Honestly, it's kind of a shame there's no way to achieve these during normal gameplay. I think I'd prefer the dark cutscenes over the bright ones for some weird reason. That being said, something tells me fighting them in the dark would be a lot more difficult if you're trying to track Ornstein while he's dashing around in the darkness. And finally, you ever wondered what would happen if you got behind Gwyndolin? Well, if you're far enough away, he'll just slowly rotate around and start attacking you. But if you get too close to him, then... nothing personnel, kid. Hope you enjoyed, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you gamers on the flip side. Later!